So I'd like to kick off our final panel for the morning on audience. We're pleased to have three experts speaking from as expert as one can be in this quick-moving field. We have Howard Lurie, who's the Vice President of Content Development for edX, Deirdre Woods from the Open Learning Initiative here at UPenn, and Margaret Todd who's the county librarian from the County of Los Angeles Public Libraries. And I was really happy to see on the Twitter stream a kind of active conversation during the last session. Where are the public libraries? And I'm pleased that the public libraries are here. And I think it's kind of fitting that we're closing off our panels by hearing from public libraries and hearing about some of the very early thinking that some of them are doing about the role that MOOCs play in the public library. Speaking of our virtual audience, I know that a lot of you have been out there tweeting away and having questions. We will attempt to insert those into the conversation when we can get at a mic here in the room, and also we'll try to round those up and try to get some answers from our panelists on those after the fact. And we hope that people continue to use the MOOC Live hashtag to continue the conversation on after this panel. But I'd like to turn it over to our speakers and invite Howard to join us up at the podium.
Well, good morning. We're the wrap-up act, so to speak, and we're glad we could do this. So I'm here from edX, the other platform. It's great. I'm really kudos to Marilee and Jim and OCLC for having this event. I think it's a long time coming, and we've been looking forward to being able to come down and be part of this conversation because in our work in the last 10 months, it's literally been riding the bicycle while we're building it with literally everything and what that means. My role is university relations, which means, in fact, a role that really didn't even exist when we started back in July, which means that I work closely on a team with people at the university partners who have signed on with edX and become part of the edX consortium. And those teams are represented here by some of the folks, Jennifer and Steve, who've been referenced earlier. And the other hat that I wear is also in conversations with publishers. And so this has been very helpful to me going forward, trying to figure out the next path of the bicycle trip. So, when I think about the last less than a year, I think some of you have seen this before. I keep coming back to this, the classic sort of technology trigger. If we had more time, we could do a poll and figure out where do you think we are in this? Are we still in the upslope? Are we in the trough of disillusionment? I don't think we're in the slope of enlightenment yet or the plateau of productivity, but maybe we'll get there at some point. But I think this is for us at edX, and I hope for many of you in the work you do, this is a helpful way to think about, where are we? Let's take a pulse here. And this has been the classic sort of starting point. And we are functioning as a startup, as is obviously Coursera. The other image, which I don't have, but I'll have you paint in your minds, my friend and colleague Randy Bass at Georgetown, who's another part of the edX consortium, has on his office those maps of the internet. Remember a couple years back, the old ones had like MySpace, right? Kind of quaint, right? So I challenge someone here or in the Twitter space or whatever to create the new one, because I haven't seen it yet. Maybe someone's created, but we need a MOOCified map of the internet for publication, and we could maybe we'll create a MOOC about how to create that. It would be great. But this is, I think, one sense of where we are. Marilee asked us to talk about audience, And we love talking about the people who have been through our courses. So what I'm going to do is give you both a quick little flyover about what edX is, and it's certainly more than just the other MOOC provider, and also give you some deep dive into what we know about our learners and our audience now, which is topping out. I was just getting the numbers this morning, around about 950,000 individual learners who have maxed up to around more than 1 million enrollments. And so our numbers keep shifting, but it's been pretty exciting to see that grow. My colleague, Piotr Mitros, who's one of our learning scientists, took this photo at the Obafemi Awolu University in Nigeria, and this to some degree is our learners. This is the context which many of our students and learners have come from. And what Piotr tells me is that this photo was of a math class. The professor was doing some type of equation, and I find this fascinating for so many ways, so many reasons, thinking about the absolute desire, the folks in the back row, taking notes, trying to figure out what's going on there, and just the functional reality of what is this like. And I think there are obviously campuses around the world that have struggling with these realities, and I'm sure that hopefully those students are taking advantage of our courses and other courses as well. My slides are a little, I have more than enough slides to talk for an hour, so I'm going to go through a few. But I think for us, this is one starting point that we like to think about. So I'm just going to go through and give you some background on what is edX right now. We are the not-for-profit venture funded originally by Harvard and MIT about a year ago, a $30 million investment from each institution. The not-for-profit has really been our starting point. It's baked into our DNA as to who we are as an organization. We're literally a separate 501c3 located in Cambridge, equidistant, to some degree not really equidistant, close to the MIT campus, but near MIT and Harvard. We are an open source platform. And so last week at the Python Developer Conference out in Santa Clara, we released what's called XBlocks, which is the first part of our open source code, which will be available really for anyone in this space, for anyone in any space who wants to use that part of the code to develop educational modules to use to deliver content. The remaining parts of the platform are going to be open sourced during the coming part of this year, but the open source concept is core to what our original investment structure was and why we wanted to pursue a not-for-profit position. Secondly, we're a portal. So you've heard referenced from Kyle yesterday about HarvardX. You've heard from Jennifer about Berkeley X. So that's our approach, is that we become this portal, and as institutions become part of our consortium, they create Wellesley X, UT Austin X, Georgetown X, and so forth. And that consortium then, as we've heard referenced this morning, works together to solve a whole raft of issues and challenges. Third point is we're deeply committed, as you are, and this is why this has been a great opportunity to be here, to pedagogy and trying to figure out what happens when we match big data. I mean, our platform, as is the case with other MOOC providers, is literally a sponge for an enormous amount of analytic data, learning data on what are students doing, and down to the level of which mouse clicks of which videos are watched in completion that result in which correct or incorrect responses on finger exercises or on assessments or whatever. And, thinking back to, and I think this is a challenge for our faculty as well, as faculty realize they now have access through the optics, the visibility to know what works and what doesn't work, and how do we define quote-unquote works. And so I think this is a revelation to us and to our faculty and to members of our consortium. And finally, production. I mean, we're deeply committed to pursuing new models of video production. Some of our courses, the course we have with Eric Lander from the Broad Institute, is pioneering some really interesting ways to teach both in a live environment and a video capture environment. So these are some of our core concepts and core principles of what edX is. Let me fly through a couple of other background points, and then we'll look at who some of our users are. So Anant Agrawal, who's our founder and inspirational, spiritual, mechanical leader. If you've met Anant, he's slept about 10 minutes in the last year and a half or so getting this ready. And literally, that may not be an exaggeration. So Anant talks about the funnel of MIT, and just last week, MIT announced its admission rates: 1,500 admitted, 19,000 applied. And so when Anant taught his first course, which was 6002X Circuits and Electronics, a highly rigorous, deeply technical foundational course at MIT, the original enrollment was 154,000. Now, some of those were people like me saying, what is this thing? Let's shop around. I don't have a background in electrical engineering. But the enrollment, as was the case with some of the early Coursera and Udacity courses, was massive. As we work our way up, we see the number who tried that first problem set. 10,000 are making it to the midterm, 9,000 passing the midterm, and obviously we ended up in the first course now with 7,000 certified. Now, the opening of that funnel was massive because it was our first course out. But Anant says that, and I think this is true when we look across our other courses, that of those 7,000, I think it would take him something like 23 years in his regular teaching to reach that numbers of students. And he calculated that's about the same as for this one course was about 150 person course in terms of cost equivalency. So again, what happened last year was sort of a wake-up call. There's something out there. There's something lurking in the world. I think back to that slide of the University of Nigeria. There's a hunger, there's a thirst, a desire to take these highly rigorous, deeply challenging courses. We are blessed with these stories. They come in all the time. I think we need an archive of just stories. Because they're compelling, they're real, and they make us sit up straight and pay attention to the video and to the problem sets and to the assessments and the instructional design that we work so hard on. But Tushig I don't know yet, and I was waiting to see if I knew this morning. He's applied to MIT and UC Berkeley. He was a 15-year-old Mongolian high school student who was taught the 6002X course in a blended format, and he achieved a perfect score on the exam. So how many other Batushigs are there out there in Mongolia? I think many. These are just a quick snapshot of some of the other students. They call us, they write us, they video blog us, they tweet and so forth, and we find this inspiring, fascinating. But those are the anecdotal sides. I want to think about sort of demographically, what do we know about who they are? They send us things like this. This was the most rewarding experience of my life. And to us, touching, because we know that in Pakistan, as the case with some Coursera courses, the actual video experience is often either blocked because of challenges with Google and YouTube, or sometimes the platform's blocked. And in some cases, people literally are hacking the electrical pole outside their apartment to get enough juice to run their computer to download the video to watch it. I'm sorry, it's hard to read, but this is a snapshot I took of just an example of the kind of very broad anonymized user analytics we get for one course running now, a Python course, 600X from MITx. And the top bar is an age scan. And interesting bulge between, say, it looks like 21 up through late 30s, early mid-30s. We find that fascinating. So in this one course, and let's not generalize this to all of our courses, we obviously have courses in law and medicine, history, classics, philosophy, but this was one of our computer science course, a bulge of that mid to late 20s. From terms of where are they from, in this particular course, a predominance for the US, and then very high enrollments from India, the UK, the Russian Federation, Brazil, Canada, and then it tapers off. Those are still around 500 or above, 500 to 1,000 students, some of those other countries. Colombia has always been a high country enrollment for many of our courses. But in this particular course, we've seen a lot of US students, and we can conjecture as to who they might be, but this is just one quick snapshot. We also see, and this again, this is just with 600X, our Python course that I want to dive deeply on, a preponderance for obviously high school, but then they definitely have some bachelor's or master's degrees. So these are folks who have some background, and I think it's relevant to the conversations we've been having the last day or so about what kind of research skills or understandings or attitudes do students have coming into these MOOCs for free, have about research methods, have about the fidelity of copyright. And in this particular case, I mean, they have something. They're coming in with some background. We also notice, and this bar on the bottom shows, in effect, numbers of interactions by day. And we see an interesting sort of pattern here. And what we discovered that, there might be some universals, that weekends still rule, and online students will still procrastinate. Okay, I'm going to wait till the last gosh darn minute to get the thing done. Now, we also know, and we can look at our user analytics and our logs, that they watch the videos over and over again and do the problem sets over and over again and look at the static versions of the text over and over again. And obviously there's some interesting things to learn. They also send us their own interpretation of data. Okay, so in this case, the vertical bar is programming skill required, and then progress through the course. And this person is comparing self-taught Udacity, OpenCourseWare, and MITx. So there's a lot of, the folks who have talked about the richness, the texture, the vibrancy of those discussion boards. If you haven't, wandered through them, do so. It's miraculous. But we love this particular person's journey through 6002X, I think. But we also see, and here the red is compared to the blue. The blue is successful in this small subset completion or a higher score on some of the assessments. And so we see that the students who are looking at the textbook at a more higher frequency over in the blue, the videos. But I think the assessments, this last one on the far side, shows the ones who tend to do the assessments, the finger exercises, over and over again. Give multiple tries, multiple entries. Not a surprise there. But because we have the analytics, and because the data can be absorbed and distributed back to the faculty, we think this is a great asset. We're excited about it. Just going to go through a couple of other things since I know I'm running out of time. And let me just come sort of to a couple of closing points about the open source platform. And then I'll wrap and let some other folks up here. Again, we think this is a new opportunity, obviously an opportunity that we want to take advantage of, but it raises a lot of questions, I think, in this community about what happens as we create derivative and repurposed versions of these courses. And so one of the, I think at the same time we're going down this road of an open source platform, we're also, as you've seen here today and what Jennifer was talking about, we've knit together this kind of coalition of the willing. I don't know where that thing came from, but I just popped into my head. But it is a coalition of folks who are helping each other and helping those institutions solve the fundamental problems of what it's going to be like. The other part that's baked into what edX is both a commitment to this open source and online learning, but a commitment to on-campus education. And so as we go down the road with edX in the next chapter of riding the bicycle while we're building it, we're also paying very close attention in our partnerships with the librarians here and the other institutions of what will this mean for their roles back at their sort of terrestrial institutions, their terrestrial roles, the chairs they actually sit in and are funded by the budgets that exist, whether a state university or they're a private institution. So there's two parallel tracks we're heading down. We'll let you know when we get there. And I'd love to see someone take me up on the challenge of creating that map of the internet today. So thanks for the time. Happy to answer questions and pass the baton over.